who gave their time and their energy and their gifts and abilities to record this so that we can bring it to you this morning. Their generosity and their giving is really what this message is all about. I love to hear those stories about people who give. I heard a story not long ago about a truck driver who was at a Taco Bell. He was sitting there finishing his meal when these three typical high school boys came in, kind of the saggy pants, a little the backwards kind of ball caps. And they went up to the counter and they were dumping all their change on the counter, trying to see if they had enough money to just get a large soda. The man was just about finished with his meal, so he got up from the table. He walked over to the boys and he took out a $20 bill and he put it down on the counter and he said, "Boys, you get anything you want." You can imagine the boys were thrilled. They were jumping around, and the guy just quietly took his trash to the trash can, got in his truck, and kept on going. I love hearing stories like that. I love hearing stories about like police officers who somehow hear about a young man whose maybe dad has passed away. There's been no father in the picture, and he's getting ready for the prom, and all of a sudden he realizes he doesn't know how to tie a tie. And so somehow the officer hears about it, drives to the house, and they get the picture of the police officer making sure that the young man looks good for the prom. Or the stories about people who will buy a lunch or buy dinner for military officers when they see them in a restaurant. Or the fast food workers. I've heard about this just this week. Fast food workers who, as soon as the person gives their order, they realize that they left their wallet at home or their purse at home. And so the fast food worker says, "Look, don't worry about it." They pull out their own debit card and they run it through. I love stories of generosity. I love the stories of people who give their time and their money and their resources, not because they have to, not because they're compelled to, but simply because they want to. I love those stories, and every time I hear them, I think, I want that to be me. I want to be the person who, gives the big tip that changes some person's life. I want to be the one who, picks up the tab for officers. I want to be the one who gives in some way that is generous and transformative, and I hope that that's who you are too. Just this past week, I heard from two people here at Faith Church who just gave, and just gave generously. And as I listened to them tell their stories, it was incredible to see the joy that came through. Not the joy for the person who got the gift, but the joy that they had simply in giving. You see, there's an overflow of joy that's ours when we give and when we give generously. Jesus is the one who said, "It is more blessed to give than to receive." And one of the blessings we receive as we give is joy. I've experienced that kind of joy a few times. My guess is that you have too. But this past week, I've been reflecting on more times that I didn't experience the joy because I didn't give. I went into a local restaurant for lunch not too long ago, and as I walked in, I saw a table of 6 soldiers, military personnel. I don't know where they were from or what they were doing, but they were sitting there eating lunch, and I thought to myself, I should pick up their tab. And so I went and I was seated at another place in the restaurant. I couldn't see their table, and I told myself, well, if they're still there when I leave, I'll buy them lunch. And of course, as you can probably figure out, by the time I got up and left, they were gone. It was a missed opportunity. And I've reflected this week on a lot of missed opportunities in my life. One day I saw a woman in a grocery store, and I knew that she and her husband have had a lot of foster children through their home, and they had a young crying infant in the cart, and I thought, well, they must have another foster child that they're caring for. And you know how it is when you go in the grocery store and you run into the same person like in every single aisle? I ran into her in every single aisle. And then I ran into her at the checkout. Clearly God was trying to tell me something. I wasn't really listening. So we're at the checkout and I'm telling myself, maybe I should buy her groceries. I mean, here they are, they're fostering several children. They have a new child in there. There was a birthday cake in there that they were getting for one of the foster children. And I thought to myself, I should buy their groceries. I should put it on my card. And then I thought, well, will she be embarrassed? Should I really do that? How do you even go about doing that? And so I started reasoning it and thinking about it. I ended up checking out and leaving the store. Put my groceries in the car, stood there for a moment, went back into the store, walked up beside her, started talking again, and then finally said, look, can I pay for your groceries? She was incredibly appreciative. I was so glad I did it. But here's the question I asked myself. Why did it take me so long? Why did being generous seem so difficult? I want to be the kind of person that generosity just flows from my life. I want to be more generous. And I want to be more generous in part so that the joy that comes with generosity can also flow through my life. I hope you feel the same way. My guess is that you do. We all want to be that person, right? We all want to be the person that leaves the big tip that changes some poor person's life. We want to buy lunch for a soldier. We want to buy a soda for a teenager just so they know that someone cares about them. To grow in generosity, we have to change not so much our financial picture, but our faith picture. You see, generosity is not a financial matter, it is a faith matter. Due to a severe famine that took place throughout the land of Israel about 10 years after Jesus' death and resurrection, the Apostle Paul was traveling around from church to church, and he was inviting churches, an invitation to churches to give to the church in Jerusalem. And as he was going through the region, he was collecting this offering to help those in need. And he traveled throughout the entire Roman Empire, or as he traveled through the Roman Empire, he was asking people to give to those. And Paul wrote about this one group of people who didn't give out of their abundance, but they gave out of their poverty. We hear about it in 1 Corinthians chapter 8, beginning at verse 1. Paul writes and he says, "And now, brothers and sisters, we want you to know about the grace that God has given the Macedonian church. In the midst of a very severe trial, their overflowing joy, their extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity. For I testify that they gave as much as they were able, and even beyond their ability. Entirely on their own, they urgently pleaded with us for the privilege of sharing in the service to the Lord's people. They exceeded our expectations. They gave themselves first of all to the Lord, and then by the will of God, also to me." The people in the churches in Macedonia were not rich. They had been stripped of all of their wealth and resources when they were conquered by the Roman Empire. The Christians who were living in this area had been persecuted many times and in many ways, and they lived in extreme poverty. They didn't have a lot of money, but giving to them wasn't a financial matter. It was a matter of their faith. They joyfully gave. They were eager to give. They gave beyond what anyone thought they could give. Their generosity, their gift, still stands today as an example for all of us. You see, giving doesn't depend on how much money we have. It depends on how much faith and trust we have. To grow in faith, to grow in generosity, there are three mindsets that we need to start to change. The first one is this: we have to stop thinking that we don't have enough to give and that we have more than enough to give. We have more than enough right now to give. And let me be clear, I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about giving our time, our skills, our gifts, our resources. Are we willing to give our time to get involved in the lives of others? We have more than enough talent and skill to share our resources to make a difference in the church or in the community. And yes, we have enough money to give as well. See, no matter where we are, no matter who we are, we do have enough to give. If we believe that God will provide for our needs, then no matter how much we have enough to give. Doesn't matter what our financial reality might be. We might be digging ourselves out of debt. We might be facing a mountain of student debt or mortgage. We may be living paycheck to paycheck. No matter what our financial reality is, we have more than enough to give if we have enough faith and trust in God. If we think about giving to God as a proportion of what we have, then we always have enough to give. If I make $100 a week and I think, well, I'm going to give God 5% or 10%, then maybe I give God $5 or $10. If I make $1,000 a week, then I think about, okay, maybe I can give God $50 or $100. If I make $1 million a year, then I can start thinking about, okay, now I can give to God $50,000 or $100,000. We always have enough to give. If we think about giving to God as a percentage, we always have enough to give. It doesn't matter what we have, we always have enough to give. I've shared this before, but when I started as the pastor at a church in Altoona, I just graduated from seminary. I'd gone through all of my savings. I really didn't have any money. And so my financial reality was that I was starting at ground zero. I had student debt I was now going to be paying off. I had loans to my parents. I'd blown through all of my savings. I had no investments. I was making the very minimum you can make as a pastor in our annual conference at a struggling church in Altoona. And as I arrived that first week, there was a box of offering envelopes on my desk. And I had to ask myself, what am I going to do? Am I going to give? What am I going to give? How much should I give? And I realized in that moment that I could never talk about tithing, giving a gift of 10% to God or to the church. I could never talk about tithing if I was not willing to tithe. So I sat down and figured out how much money I was making and what that was every week and what 10% of that was. And I looked at that amount and I thought, that's more money than I've ever given to the church. And I'm telling myself I'm going to do that every week from now on. It was nerve-wracking as I sat down and wrote out that first check. In order to be generous, we have to turn around this idea that we don't have enough and start telling ourselves we have more than enough to give. We have more than enough to be generous. We have more than enough time to help those who might be in need. We have more than enough gifts and skills and abilities to step into a situation and maybe make it better. We have more than enough faith to step out in the life of the church and make things better. We have more than enough. In order to be generous, we need to turn around this idea, just as the people of Macedonia gave beyond everyone's wildest dreams. We need to be able to give generously. And as they gave, they experienced joy. And as we give, we'll experience joy, because as Jesus said, it's more blessed to give. Second mindset that needs to change is that we need to stop thinking that everything we have is ours and that it all belongs to God. Near the end of King David's life, he told the people that his son Solomon was going to build the temple in Jerusalem. The temple was going to be the absolute finest building on the planet. To build the temple, there was going to need to be an abundance of gold, silver, bronze, gemstones, wood, incense, material, silk. They were going to need the finest artisans the most talented tradespeople to make the temple a reality. David reminded them that, look, we can do this and we can give this way because what we have isn't ours. It all belongs to God. So David outlines everything that's going to be needed for the temple. He goes through all the resources. And then he says this, who am I and who are my people that we should be able to give as generously as this? Everything comes from you, and we have given you only what comes from your hand. David was asking the people, can we really give to God? Can we really give all these things that God is asking for and needs to build the temple? Can we really give this generously? He answers his own question by saying, yes, we can. Because what we have doesn't belong to us. It all belongs to God. We need to change our mindset. The things that we have in life really aren't ours. They belong to God. We need to change our understanding and see ourselves not as owners, but as stewards. This idea needs to be part of our faith and our mindset. What we have isn't ours. God has given it to us, and God gives it to us to be a blessing to our families, to be a blessing to our community, to be a blessing to the world. And if we give as God calls us to give, God is going to be glorified in the world. Needs are going to be met. And here's the thing, we will overflow with joy. Third thing is that we have to start thinking, I'm going to give now and not when. I'm going to give now and not when. Too often I tell God, I'll give when. God, I'll give when I leave and the military personnel are still at the table, then I'll buy them lunch. I've missed so many opportunities by simply saying, I'll give when, instead of saying, I'll give now. See, a lot of opportunities to give and to give generously come in the moment. Seeing a need at a store, that need might be there in a moment and you might not see it again. Seeing someone in a restaurant that you just are feeling compelled to buy their food, they may not be there when you turn around and look for them again. We need to jump on opportunities when we see them. God's giving us so many opportunities to give, and when we feel God prompting us, and you know what those feelings are like, it's not every situation, but when we feel those God prompting moments, we need to tell ourselves, I'm going to give now, and I'm not going to put it off until later. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be faithful, we shouldn't be wise in our giving. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be discerning and make sure that we're giving in good and honest ways. But take it from someone who's made so many excuses either not to give or that I'll give later, that I've missed those opportunities. The other problem with saying that we're not going to give now, but when, is that when may never come. And we can always find an excuse to hold us back. I'll give when I'm out of debt. God, I'll give when the mortgage is paid off. I'll give when I get my next raise. I'll give when the kids are out of diapers. I'll give when the kids are out of college. You see, you got like 20 some years of excuses there. I'll give when I have enough money in my IRA. There'll never be enough money. I'll give when I retire and I have more time. Let's face it, there's never a good time to give. We can always find a reason not to. We can always make an excuse. We can always put it off to another day. So we have to tell ourselves, I'm going to give now and not when. You can give now. You have more than enough. Everything you have belongs to God anyways. You have opportunities in front of you today to give your money, your time, your gifts, your skills, your abilities, your faith, your leadership. Jesus said it's more blessed to give. One of the blessings that is ours when we give is joy, an overflowing joy, a joy that just never ends. So I just want to invite you, find a way to give, and find a way to give now. Pick up a shoebox on your way out. Stop at the Operation Christmas Child table. Talk to them about how you can give now to not only bring joy to a child around the world, but how you will be filled with joy as you hear their stories. You will be filled with joy as you know that you've helped to change a child's life. We're entering into a season of Thanksgiving. Give in ways that express your thanks and praise and trust in God. Find a way to give in the upcoming Advent and Christmas season. You know, we celebrate in Advent and Christmas God giving us everything he had. God came to us as Jesus. God gave everything. And it changed our lives, and it changed our world. God's giving changed the world. Our giving can change the world. It might not, but it doesn't matter, because giving will change you. Giving will change you. Giving will fill you with joy. Jesus said it is more blessed to give. And as we give, the blessing we receive is an abundance of joy.